4 weeks into the season, I think we're getting a little carried away with our praise and hype for Gervon Dexter and punter Tory Taylor. But on the other end of the spectrum, I also think we need to slow down and give a little more grace to DJ Moore.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On the show today, we go through where DJ Moore is getting a little too much scrutiny at this point. And I think we need to lay off and remember some lessons we've learned from past Chicago Bears in a similar position. But I also think we need to slow down a little bit with the hype train getting a little out of control with Gervon Dexter. People are already saying he's better than Jalen Carter in Philadelphia. That's really not the case at this point. And also, unpopular opinion here, but Tory Taylor as well. Everyone wants to crown Tory Taylor the king of Chicago right now. And if you really look at all the punting metrics, he's been about average this season. We'll go through exactly what we're seeing from all three of these Chicago Bears so far this year. But I want to start with DJ Moore because somehow, one of the more quiet, calm, even-keeled wide receivers is starting to get some sort of diva-adjacent reputation from Chicago Bears fans because we've occasionally seen DJ Moore a little bit frustrated in the middle of a football game. And all of a sudden, it feels like there's been some turning against DJ Moore or this feeling like, he's causing problems or something. I mean, I'm not even really sure exactly what the fear is or what the consequences are of this. But like there have been, clips or whatever of Moore sitting alone on the bench on the sideline or looking frustrated after an incomplete pass or something along those lines. And people are saying, oh no, like now all of a sudden he wants the ball more or whatever, that he's going to be some kind of problem. And like, it just really doesn't fit who DJ Moore has been throughout the course of his career, who he is right now. And I find myself feeling a little bit frustrated with it because it's like, didn't we learn this lesson with Jay Cutler? Like, shouldn't we have gotten over this by now of like, we don't get an accurate representation of a player's demeanor and a player's general attitude just from broadcast clips cutting to the sideline for 3 seconds during a game. It's such a small sample size taken out of context over and over again that all of a sudden a player can get this reputation that's in no way real or, backed up by anything any teammates say or anything else that they do during the game. But because, we see one picture here and 1 3-second clip during a broadcast there of him frustrated in a game where, spoiler alert, everyone on offense is frustrated when you score 3 points and a half, or everyone on offense is frustrated when you don't score an offensive touchdown in a game. Like these are all moments that any reasonable person and any reasonable player should be frustrated. And yet I think we take that and twist it a little bit to our own narratives or whatever we want to see in it and say, okay, all of a sudden, is DJ Moore frustrated with Caleb Williams? Is he tired of this rookie quarterback? Is he tired of Shane Waldron? Is he going to want out of Chicago all of a sudden after just signing like a 6-year contract extension or a 4-year extension on top of the 2 years he still had on his deal? Like DJ Moore just locked himself into Chicago for a long time. We saw on Hard Knocks, he just bought a house in Chicago. He's expecting another child that they're going to raise in Chicago. I mean, he very clearly wants to be here, gets along well with Caleb Williams, and has caused no problems whatsoever. And yet we still get some of this feeling of like, oh, maybe he's unhappy or whatever. Like these conversations between quarterbacks and wide receivers are perfectly normal parts that every team does, and you just don't really see it because you're not watching every other team's game as closely as you're watching the Chicago Bears and DJ Moore and Caleb Williams. So I wanted to play a clip briefly this week from DJ Moore talking about, having those conversations on the sideline with Caleb Williams and just like how normal and natural this is and how he kind of approaches that.
Are you the type of receiver to say, like, this is how I want this ball thrown on these type of routes? Or are you just kind of like, when we get to that play, we trust the chemistry and the work that we've done?
Yeah, I'm just the type to go out there and just trust it. We should have had a talk about that, but we didn't. It came up faster than expected, and we didn't connect on it.
DJ, as a veteran player, one who knows he's going to be here for a while, is it ever frustrating when it's essentially you've got a new quarterback learning a new system, all that kind of stuff that you have to be patient? Is it ever hard for you to be patient as a veteran player who's just ready to roll?
A little bit, and then it's not, because we was all rookies at one point being a vet. So I know what he's going through. You can't be too frustrated. I mean, you could be frustrated within the way you're playing, like as a player, but not at a young guy that's still coming along. So, yeah.
All of the miscommunications and frustrations that we see, DJ Moore and Caleb Williams experiencing on offense, like this is all really normal early stage stuff between quarterbacks and wide receivers. And I wouldn't expect that they would come in week 1, week 2, or week 3, even week 4 at this point, like perfectly on the same page, connected on everything, because they just haven't had the experience in every situation, on every route, against every coverage, in every area of the field. Like there's going to be different rules for different situations that they have to be on the same page with. It's not just like, okay, every time you run this route, you're going to do it this way, because, well, sometimes you'll run that route slightly differently depending on the coverage and also depending on what area of the field you're on. And you just can't practice every possible situation through training camp in the preseason. Right? You just have to go through it of in-season, regular season games, and years of that. There's still going to be situations that they haven't encountered before, but you kind of hope that they learn a general tendency of like, okay, generally he prefers to throw these types of passes, so I should expect those over time, but it just takes time. And so we don't have to be worried or panicked about, DJ Moore's reaction to those plays. We don't have to be worried or panicked about him having, career lows right now in yards per reception, yards per game, yards per target. Only has 1 touchdown so far this season. Like, it's going to be slow for everybody. And that slowness is frustrating for us watching them. It's frustrating for them being a part of it. Like, everybody wants it to be different. It's not like the Bears are scoring 30 points a game and DJ Moore is frustrated because he's not getting his 10 catches for 100 yards, right? This is not him saying, I'm frustrated that you're not feeding me the ball more. It's, I'm frustrated that we're not as good as we could be. He's more like disappointed in himself, in the offense, in the whole thing coming together here. And like, so are the rest of us. Like, everything he's feeling and showing seems pretty reasonable and rational to where the team is right now. Like, I'm glad that my wide receiver is a little frustrated that they're not scoring enough points. Like, good. If he wasn't frustrated by it, then he wouldn't care enough. You know what I mean? Like, he's frustrated because he cares. And so if he wasn't frustrated, then maybe he doesn't care enough to not be frustrated by it. And so, sure, maybe, would you like to see him express it slightly differently or whatever? I guess, but like 99% of the time, we don't even see any players' frustrations on the sideline because we're just not getting access to it. So there are plenty of other players on the Bears who have expressed frustrations on the sideline that we just haven't seen, and it's not a big deal because that's just natural football sideline stuff. But because we've seen a couple of little things from DJ Moore, all of a sudden everyone clutches their pearls, and it's a big deal. What's going on with this wide receiver? Like, he's always been super calm, cool, collected. He's just a different kind of cat, just a different style of guy. And I think that's where we assign then, okay, like, he must, because he's different than other players are, he must be a problem then. And again, we did the same kind of thing with Jay Cutler when it just really wasn't validated in anybody else's experiences or anything tangible that you could report in there. So, like, let's learn our lesson and lay off DJ Moore for a little bit here. I also think we need to slow down a little bit on the other end of the spectrum. Some of the hype train is starting to get a little bit out of control on a couple other areas of this Bears team, particularly with the comparisons for Gervon Dexter on the defensive line and Tory Taylor at punter. Both players are playing well, but like, we can say, hey, they're playing really well without blowing things way out of proportion. So let's kind of come back down to reality next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the best way to play daily fantasy sports. Because with PrizePicks, you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the best way to do daily fantasy because PrizePicks puts you in complete control. They set stat projections for players, and you pick whether those players will do more or less than their projected stats. And if you get your picks right, you can win big. Unlike the other daily fantasy platforms where, you're setting a lineup and your lineup is going against everybody else's lineup and whoever has the best lineup wins the money. Like, this is just you versus the PrizePicks projections. That's what makes it so much fun to play. And right now, you can get started with $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup, win or lose. Just download the app, the PrizePicks app today, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. I never want to be someone who comes on the podcast and tears down players and craps on them and says, no, actually, they're really bad and you shouldn't root for them. You shouldn't like them. These are human beings too. And, I don't want to be that guy who's just like negative and always trying to tear guys down. So I want to say that on the preface, on the front end of this, as to say, like, Gervon Dexter is having a very strong start of the season for the Chicago Bears. He has clearly taken a step forward, is making impact plays as a pass rusher, holding up well in the running game. He is playing well, and I am hoping for Gervon Dexter to continue to play well and continue to ascend in his second year with the Chicago Bears. All of that is true. And I think that's a great place to leave it. Boom. I am perfectly on board with that. I think we're all on the same page there. Go Gervon Dexter. We are Team 99. But then you get Chicago Bears fans who always take hey, this thing's going really well. Let's overinflate it and just run rampant with it. Let's run wild with it and all of a sudden make it, the greatest thing in the world. And like, I want to make sure that we don't get too carried away, because then you start to set super unrealistic expectations for these players, and then you end up getting disappointed that these players aren't meeting these expectations that were never really there for them in the first place, but you inflated them a little bit too much to get up that high. And it brings me back to Jalen Carter. It's been the popular thing this week because Gervon Dexter has 3 sacks this season, and Jalen Carter has 0 sacks this season, to say that, Gervon Dexter is already better than Jalen Carter, who the Philadelphia Eagles took with the 9th overall pick last year, that the Bears traded down from. The Bears could have taken Jalen Carter, but like the narrative is like, I see the Bears passed on Jalen Carter and still got a better player in the second round. And that's just not true. And we can say all the nice things we want about Gervon Dexter without taking it to this next level, right? Like, can we just appreciate that he's playing well and has gotten better and is doing good things for this Bears defense without instantly having to jump to, all right, then he's better than Jalen Carter, as I hit my microphone with talking my hands too much, Italians. And I think of it a lot when it comes to, like, this is not at all a 1-1 comparison, but, LeBron James, Michael Jordan. It's like, okay, I was like, can we appreciate that LeBron James does great stuff without trying to jump over to Michael Jordan every single time he does anything? Like, it happens all the time in other sports too, and it's happening now with Gervon Dexter and Jalen Carter. So I just want to, like, bring us back down to earth here a little bit without crapping on Gervon Dexter, right? Like, so I'm trying to be very, like, clear about this. I'm not saying this is not to be negative about Gervon Dexter, to say, hey, like, wait a minute, let's be realistic about what we're actually experiencing here, right? So, like, you look at their season so far through 4 games, small sample size, but like Jalen Carter's played about 23 more snaps to be specific and has 0 sacks. So it's like, wow, Dexter has played less and has more sacks. That's great. And it is great. But that does not mean that Gervon Dexter is the better all-around player because he has 3 sacks and Jalen Carter has 0. That's 3 sacks out of 176 plays he's been on the field for. So what about the other 173 plays? And like, Jalen Carter hasn't had a sack, but he's been on the field for 199 plays. So like, what has he done on the 199 plays he's been on the field for versus what Dexter has done on the 176 plays he's been on the field for? Because those 3 plays out of the 176 that Dexter's been on the field for, those sacks represent 1.7% of the plays he's been on the field. Those have been 3 big plays, but it's literally 98. It's less than, there's 98% more of other plays that he's been on the field for. So it's not all about sacks. The sacks matter, but what also matters is what kind of pressure you're getting on the quarterback. Not just the sacks, but the quarterback hits, the quarterback hurries. How often are you affecting the quarterback's ability to pass the ball? Not just sacking him to the ground, but moving him off of his spot. Or at another layer, how often are you beating the offensive lineman across from you? How long are you winning your pass rush reps one-on-one or even one-on-two in some of those? And also the running game, like who's making the bigger impact in the running game? And I think over the course of the season, we have seen so far that sacks are kind of the only category where Gervon Dexter is ahead of Jalen Carter. I hope I haven't done that more than once today. Jalen Carter of the Eagles. Jalen Carter has 13 pressures to Gervon Dexter's 9. Doesn't have a sack, but has more plays where he's affecting the quarterback's passing ability with his pass rush. Jalen Carter also has a noticeably higher pass rush win rate. When you're talking about, okay, on what percentage of his pass rushes is he beating the offensive linemen, or men, plural, across from him? Gervon Dexter's at 11.5%. Excuse me. Gervon Dexter is at 8.5%. Jalen Carter is at 11.5%. And you might say, okay, what's a 3% difference there? But I'll tell you that that Jalen Carter's 11.5% ranks 32nd among all defensive tackles, and Gervon Dexter's 8.5% ranks 55th. So Carter ranks 32, Dexter ranks 55th. This is not me saying Dexter has been bad, just me saying that Carter has been a little bit better this season, despite the sack difference. Carter also has one more run stop, a tackle for a short gain or a loss in the running game that constitutes as a stop for the defense. A tackle short of the first down marker, or a tackle right near the line of scrimmage, or a tackle for a loss. Carter has one more of those than Gervon Dexter. It's not to say that there's this huge gap between Carter and Dexter. I think given where Dexter was drafted and where Carter was drafted, the Bears are getting really good value on Gervon Dexter right now, and he's having a great year. But we don't have to instantly make him better than Jalen Carter. I think the other thing to keep in mind here also is that, okay, yes, through 4 games this season, Jalen Carter has 0 sacks. But he had 6 last year. You know what I mean? He was a second in the running for Defensive Rookie of the Year when the voting came down to it. He was second place in that. Yes, he has 0 this year, but the 6 last year. Whereas over the course of their careers, Gervon Dexter is now up to 5.5. So even career-wise, Dexter still doesn't have as many sacks as Jalen Carter has. Plus, Carter has the higher pass rush win rate, more run stops, more total pressures. Pretty much everywhere across the board, Carter is the better player. And that's okay. Carter should be the better player. Carter was drafted in the top 10. He should be the better player. Gervon Dexter's playing very well. And the fact that he's as close to Jalen Carter as he is great for the Chicago Bears. But we don't have to make Gervon Dexter better than Jalen Carter. It's okay. He can just be very good and doesn't have to be about the comparison to the other player that the Bears could have drafted instead and all that stuff. That's where I just want to say, let's slow down just a little bit on the hype train. Celebrate him, but let's not go crazy. The same thing is true for Tory Taylor, who I've certainly got some attention after the draft for being critical of that draft pick. And I'm sure people are going to be mad about what we talk about with Tory Taylor here, but I hate to tell you, Tory Taylor's a good punter and has been valuable for the Chicago Bears, but statistically, he's been an average punter across the NFL this season. And I'll show you pretty much all the numbers, top to bottom. Average punter, and still not worth a 4th round pick. We'll look at what Tory Taylor's done through the first 4 games of this season next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, FanDuel is helping you start your season with a big return because they're going to give you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So whether that $5 bet is correct or not, they're going to add $200 in bonus bets right into your account. So you could just bet $5 on Bears-Panthers this weekend. The Bears are 3.5-point home favorites on the spread. The money line straight up is Bears -200, and the over-under is set at 41.5. You can also bet on college football, on the baseball playoffs, the WNBA playoffs, golf, tennis, combat sports, you name it. They've got it all on FanDuel, all in their app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So to get your $200 in guaranteed bonus bets after your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. I don't want to be painted as the Tory Taylor hater, And much like we talked about Jalen Carter, I'm not here to tear down Tory Taylor or say that like Tory Taylor has had some really huge punts for the Chicago Bears. His ability to flip the field and play the field position game, especially in this last week against the Rams, was critical towards the Chicago Bears winning that game. Tory Taylor is a solid punter. Tory Taylor is an upgrade at punter over what the Chicago Bears had last season in Trent Gill. For sure, Tory Taylor is good at what he does and has a lot of tricks in the bag that is valuable to the Chicago Bears. But we've gone pretty far towards crowning him the king of Chicago and making him everyone's favorite player. And I'm not here to tell you should, like, Tory Taylor seems like a cool dude. He seems fun. We should all root for Tory Taylor, but like, we don't have to make him the best punter in the NFL either, right? Same conversation with Gervon Dexter. Player is playing well. Let's appreciate that. We don't have to take that and then inflate it to all of a sudden, wow, Tory Taylor is the greatest thing Chicago has ever seen at punter. Like, he's great. He's fun to watch punt. He makes punting exciting, and I value and appreciate that. But like, like the Bears put out this punter hype video for him, and like that's cool. And I love special teams and supporting punters and all that stuff. Like, I'm not anti-hype video, but people have taken that, which I'm cool with. I'm cool with the hype video, taking that and been like, wow, see how great the Bears have the best punter in the NFL. And it's like, no, they have a good punter. They do not have the best punter in the NFL. In fact, he's been a lot closer to an average punter, which is fine. That's great. Like, he's a rookie in his fourth game to be an average punter and to have some big punts along the way. Perfect. That's what you want. Great. Really happy that Tory Taylor has done all that. Cool. But like, let's slow down a little bit on how great we are claiming he's been, because, the punting numbers speak for themselves here. We don't have to get into, I don't think telling you this yards per punt number and his net punt, like, okay, averages 48 yards per punt, 42 net average. Okay, what those numbers don't mean anything. He ranks 19th in yards per punt and 20th in net average yards per punt. He's got a big leg. We know he can kick it far, but over the course of the season, the distance has been average. Hang time, 4.41 seconds. That number in a vacuum doesn't mean much. Okay, is that a lot? Is that a little? I don't know. Ranks 15th among punters in the NFL this season. So, okay, that's good. Fine, great. An average punter is valuable to have. And then his expected points added per punt, which kind of is more one of the deeper analytics just on like, how much is he contributing towards winning? Every player can get an expected points average. Think of it as like wins above replacement in baseball, but a little bit different. But that's an oversimplification, but same idea, right? Like, okay, like how much is he contributing towards your winning? He ranks 15th among punters in that category. Those are all average ranks, 19th, 15th, 15th. And, the metrics don't perfectly account for how well he places the ball, towards the sideline and inside the 20. I think PFF's punting grades are probably the best singular metric for punting, because, they designed it with Chris Cluey, the former NFL punter, and like special teams coaches have had a lot of hands on how they have worked through punt grading over the years. Tory Taylor ranks 19th. Again, okay. Average, fine punter. It's not a bad thing, right? I'm not here to say Tory Taylor is actually he's a bad punter and you shouldn't like him at all. Not what I'm trying to say here whatsoever. But more like, hey, we can say we really like this punter without having to make him the greatest punter in the NFL. And I come back to the same take I had right after they drafted Tory Taylor in the 4th round, which is that no punter can be worth a 4th round pick. It's just not the case. And that is so far holding up to be true for Tory Taylor. It was an overspend to use a 4th round pick on Tory Taylor. A punter who is 15th, 16th, 19th, 20th in the punting stats is not worth a 4th round pick. A punter who is first in every punting stat is also not worth a 4th round pick. And I think there's a couple of things that stand out here in particular with Tory Taylor. I said it after the draft. I should have pulled the clip. Every year, there are really good punters that go undrafted. Every year, there are really good punters that hit free agency. You do not need to invest a 4th round pick in a punter. A 6th round pick, a 7th round pick, I'll allow it. Maybe even a 5th. But a 4th round pick is where you can get quality impact playmakers elsewhere on your roster that are more valuable than even a very good punter. And I think the most damning thing here on the punter side is that Tory Taylor is not even the best rookie punter this season. Yes, he was the first one drafted. He was drafted in the 4th round, but good punters go undrafted every year. And the Cincinnati Bengals punter, Ryan Rehkow, I believe it's pronounced. It's Rehkow. I'm not good on the punter pronunciations for you, but he went undrafted out of BYU and is ahead of Tory Taylor in every single punting stat you can find. He's having a better year top to bottom than Tory Taylor, and he went undrafted. And the Bears used a 4th-round pick on a punter. And I find it frustrating when you could have used that 4th-round pick on a guard, a center, another offensive tackle, another pass rusher. I mean, you wouldn't have had to trade to get back in to get Austin Booker. You know what I mean? Like things like that. You could have used that 4th-round pick on a position player that can develop into something higher impact over time and signed the best rookie punter is currently an undrafted rookie free agent that any team could have signed without using a draft pick. There are also 2 punters who are ahead of Tory Taylor in all the stats who were available as free agents this offseason. Ryan Townsend and Johnston, the Steelers punter who got hurt. So, he's hurt. Okay. And then Townsend, the Texans punter, I think. Both available in free agency this year. Both changed teams. So it wasn't like they just re-signed with their own team, but actually hit the market and changed teams in free agency who are punting better than Tory Taylor. They cost more. Okay, I'll give you that. But a 4th-round pick is not worth saving some salary on a punter. You know what I mean? Especially when an undrafted free agent punter ends up having a better season. So again, I'm happy for Tory Taylor. I want Tory Taylor to punt well in Chicago. I'm rooting for Tory Taylor. I like Tory Taylor. I think Tory Taylor has done some great things for the team this season. And also, let's not make him the best punter in the NFL when he's literally statistically closer to average. And there's also another rookie who went undrafted who's punting better than him. Okay, can we agree? Can we call that reasonable? Without it, I'm not trying to be the hot take shock jock guy here. I'm just trying to defend a little bit of hey, I wasn't a huge fan of the pick at the start, and he's been good. That's fine, but let's not get carried away with it now either. Let's slow down. That's kind of the theme here. Let's slow down on the scrutiny for DJ Moore. Let's slow down on making Gervon Dexter the best young defensive tackle in football and better than Jalen Carter. And let's slow down on making Tory Taylor the best punter in football. We can say, hey, DJ Moore needs to be better. Sure. Gervon Dexter has been great. Sure. Tory Taylor has been very good. Sure. Yes. All of those statements are true. And we can celebrate that Tory Taylor's been good. Tory Taylor's been fun to watch. Gervon Dexter's been very good. Gervon Dexter has been fun to watch. Let's enjoy it. Let's celebrate it. Let's have fun with it. Let's put out punter hype videos. I'm cool with the punter hype videos, for sure. He kicked a bomb this season. But the Bengals punter had a longer punt earlier this season. You know what I mean? Let's just keep it in the context because we get so Chicago Bears siloed and focused, and we just think, well, it must be better than every other team, and what that other guy is doing can't be as good as what our guys do. And look at what our guys do, and we see him every single game. But you don't see the other guy every single game. And so I like to just take a step back, bring us back down to earth just a little bit without raining on all of the fun. Let's have fun with it and not get super carried away. Let's have fun with a potential Chicago Bears win over the Carolina Panthers this Sunday. It should be a great matchup that the Bears can absolutely take advantage of. If you want to go more in depth on that, make sure you check out yesterday's Crossover Thursday podcast here on Locked On Bears when we talked to Julian Council from Locked On Panthers to get a sense of the Andy Dalton effect in Carolina, some of the injuries on the Panthers defense that should bode well for Bears offense and Caleb Williams kind of getting rolling in that game. So go check out that episode if you have not listened to it, and keep making Locked On Bears your first listen each and every day. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. That's why you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Coming back on Mondays, we'll recap everything that happens against the Carolina Panthers. Win or hopefully not lose. I mean, geez, against this team. Win, lose, or draw, I guess, but win. We'll break down a victory Monday and have fun with this one at the not-so-fast Andy Dalton revenge game, but the DJ Moore second revenge game. We'll see if he can get things growing and maybe shake a little bit of that frustration along the way through that process. And you know what? Either way, you can be sure that with the Locked On Bears podcast, you'll always get another opportunity to bear down.